Hi, welcome back. I had a great question tonight by MEMDK 1997. By the way, thanks for joining me on the channel. And he asked, can you clean the exhaust pipe or the after treatment if the turbo goes bad and starts pumping oil down the pipe? The second part of his question was, does it damage any sensors and or the after treatment? The third part of the question was he has an exhaust leak by his SCR, part of his after treatment someplace, I'm not sure where, and is that a problem? First, let me say that all of the after treatment does have small holes on the bottom drilled in the cans so that moisture can come out, because they can sweat in there if it's raining and it's cool. So there's always a tad bit of exhaust coming out those little holes as they naturally push the moisture that falls to the bottom of the can out. So that's number one. Number two, let's look at the oil going down the pipe. So if it's just a mist of oil, I used to disconnect the pipe from the after treatment, and I've got the turbo off, obviously, and I would just take a steamer or hot seat down the pipe, and we caught it in a like a 20-gallon tote, and do that until the pipe was clean. The important thing is you need to take a flashlight and look in the inlet can, part of the after treatment, where that pipe hooked up, and see if that's loaded with motor oil inside. So if it's loaded with motor oil, the best thing to do is at least pull the diesel particulate filter part of the after treatment out, split it apart, and steam that can out nice and clean. I have had people that just took rags and wiped it all out, shot some solvent in there and wiped it as clean as they could. Okay? That seemed to work for them. So yes, that can be cleaned. Now, the filter, the diesel oxidation catalyst, and the filter, those really can't be cleaned. The textbook answer to your question about the after treatment is if it's oil soaked, Cummins says it has to be replaced. No ifs, ands, or buts. I have found that a lot of times people are driving down the road when the turbo goes bad, right? Everything's hot, and the turbo doesn't pour oil back there, it mists it back. So the after treatment would get hotter than it should because oil is fuel. And when the oil's misted, it does burn. If the turbo bearing goes out and it starts to spray oil back there before the turbo has a catastrophic failure, probably the after treatment would have to be replaced, because you can't get that oil out of there, and what's going to happen is when it gets hot enough to ignite, it's just going to melt, literally melt the after treatment. I've not seen a DOC melted. I saw many diesel particulate filters melted. Okay, so that's that. Sensors. It's not going to hurt the temperature sensors at all unless the diesel particulate or diesel oxidation catalyst outlet temperature sensor got over 1600 degrees. If they get over 1600 degrees, they lose their accuracy, and then you need to replace them because the system's going to be logging faults on temperature. It's not going to work right. So under that, no problem with those. If either of the knock sensors got damaged, once you get the new turbo on and you clean the pipe and the can out good where the pipe attaches, and you hook it back up, do a stationary regen, watch it, make sure the temperatures don't start going through the roof. If the DOC starts getting really hot really fast, take it out of a regen and let it cool down, and then start another one in a few minutes, and that'll burn out what's in there, okay? And then once it'll go through a stationary regen and finish, then you're going to do a second regen and you're going to log it. And that regen is going to tell you pretty much if everything's okay. If you can finish a stationary regen So I'm talking about when you'd start with the software program, and Regen will usually run about 40 minutes to an hour and 20 minutes tops, depending on the engine that you've got. If it'll go through that and you don't log any faults in any sensors, you're probably good to go and you're going to be okay. As long as you're reading some DPF restriction when you're doing the regen, the element's not cracked real bad, you're probably going to be okay. If either of the knock sensors have a problem, they're going to fault out either on their measurements or there's a fault for the heater element. And if any oil gets on the heater, it's a little shell, a little tiny shell in there that gets real hot, ceramic. If anything gets on there, a liquid, it'll crack. So if that gets cracked, you'll know because you'll have an active fault for that. So that's pretty much the gist of the after treatment part. And I have taken pipes off for people, looked in the inlet can. It looked like it might have been a little damp. I didn't see any oil laying in there. I took a rag, wiped it out the best I could without pulling the after treatment off. I steamed that pipe out into a bucket, so it's the pipe from the turbo to the after treatment. Let it run into a tote or a bucket, so it was nice and clean. The water won't hurt that's in there. Hooked it back up, put the new turbo on, put it through the stationary regen. Make sure you don't get any water on your inlet knock sensor up there by the turbo. Do not get water on that. If you do, when you turn the key on, it's gonna crack and it's gonna be gone. So screw that out and just put it in a rag and cover it up while you're cleaning the pipe or whatever. If you've got that injector on the side of the cast iron pipe for the after treatment, water's not going to hurt that, and you should be okay. The exhaust leaks, so I would say if you can smell it in the cab, you probably need to take care of it. Whenever our drivers come in and say, hey, we got exhaust, we can smell it in the cab, usually we can find a fairly substantial leak under the cab. Remember I said that all those elements, the SCR, the DPF, the CAT, maybe not the DPF, but the inlet can and the outlet can to the DOC and out of the DPF, they have small holes in the bottom so that moisture can blow out. So you have exhaust coming out of there. And I believe there's one in the SCR brick. So you have some coming out of there. Of course, the danger is when you're parked overnight, if you're backed in next to other tractors and there's no wind, that smoke can go right in the cab. And we both know that that can be fatal. And if you're running down the road and you're smelling it and it's hot out and you got the windows shut with the AC on, you can get drowsy and fall asleep from the carbon monoxide poisoning. So you don't want to go there. So that's my advice on that. Both of us, I think, have been on the earth long enough that we have a good dose of common sense. So sometimes you need to use that. So I think I answered all your questions. If I didn't, leave another comment and I can go ahead and answer a little bit more. So quick recap, clean the pipe, yes. Couple regens. If there's no fault codes logging on the after treatment, you're probably okay. No faults logging any of the sensors, you're probably okay. Don't get any water on either of the knock sensors, and be careful with that leak. Thanks for joining me on Neural Splendor. Have a good one.